All right, everybody, come on in. It is Friday. It's the Democracy Stupid, and I am joined today by Dave Roberts. I'm very lucky to be joined by Dave. He is the force behind Volts. It is a community built around his newsletters, his podcasts, his social media, focused on the intersection of politics, policy, and climate, I guess. And you got to find his work. I mean, I have been following it, listening to it for, I don't know, 3 years plus. I feel a lot smarter because of it. I mean, Dave, it's an incredible piece of work that you do,
Thank
and
you.
really helpful to anybody who cares about this stuff.
Yeah, and I would just say, I mean, I think when people say climate, which is fine as shorthand, I guess, but I don't really do much about climate. It's almost all about clean energy. It's almost all about decarbonization. It's
Right.
about action, doing it. I'm not just, filling heads with dread. You know what I mean? It's all
Yeah.
about moving forward and solving things.
Yeah, and just by the way, for those of you who are curious, it is about technology, but it's also about economics. It's about the uh, the different ways you can conceive of a power grid, to doing using data better, all of which to make energy more abundant, more available, and less expensive and cleaner.
That's the idea.
Yeah. Well, let's start with this because this is not the idea. I mean, Donald Trump.
None of this is the idea.
Yeah. Your friend Donald Trump, I think, sold our future for a handful of petrodollars. No, strike that. It wasn't a handful, it was a bankful of petrodollars. And it turns out that our future isn't his to sell. And and maybe the war in Iran is convincing people that we ought to make progress in a different direction.
I mean, it is measurably pushing people in a different direction. We don't have to speculate. Like, I think the EV sales in the EU doubled last month, like grew by 50%, something crazy like that. Like China, this is funny, the whole Trump administration is allegedly, gripped by competition with China. We got to beat China, blah, 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 blah. The Iran war has been an absolute gift from above for China because they were struggling with overproduction of solar panels and batteries. I mean, because they had sort of subsidized production heavily for years and years. And this was a problem they were dealing with, but that problem's gone because they're selling those things like hotcakes now. They can't manufacture them fast enough. Vietnam, Cuba, Brazil, everybody's importing solar panels. I mean, I don't know how you could have constructed, if you were doing it on purpose, a clearer illustration of the dangers of being hooked on fossil fuels that come from other countries. You know what I mean? Could not be clearer.
And yet, I mean, your tax dollars and mine are funding companies not to complete wind farms. I think we're up to $2 billion now paying companies not to build clean infrastructure and instead to invest in fossil fuels.
I just was reading yesterday that very company that Trump paid $1 billion not to build a offshore wind farm here just opened its big new offshore wind farm in Europe. They're using these floating turbines, very like new tech, new advanced tech. So, everybody else is moving ahead at pace, faster now. I mean, immeasurably faster now.
And it wasn't that long ago. I mean, when we passed the Inflation Reduction Act, suddenly the United States was leading again in the transition away from the transition to cleaner energy.
I don't know that we were leading. What IRA would have done is help us start catching up. Just start catching up. I mean, right. At this point, China dominates the raw materials, manufacturing, processing, manufacturing of almost every element of the clean energy stack. And I think what we were trying to do with IRA was, for national security purposes, create at least a little buffer, do at least some manufacturing and mining and production in the US, just as a buffer against China trying to use this dependency as a weapon. But there was it would take decades for us to genuinely catch up with China at this point, even if we were trying, even if we were not currently running the other direction.
Right. But China has different motivations than we do, because they don't actually have fossil fuels. They have coal, but they don't have oil, and
they have tons of coal, but they the oil shocks of the early 21st century made a very big impression on China, and they passed coordinated, coherent national policy to, among other things, create an EV industry, which is the single biggest and most effective tool currently for reducing oil demand. So it was all about national and economic security for China. I know that climate change is hurting China. Like it's the physical effects of climate change are ravaging China uniquely almost. So they do care about that. But as I like to say, the transition to clean energy is overdetermined. You can justify it economically, environmentally, geopolitically. You don't need to bring climate into it at all if you don't want to. There are plenty of justifications.
We had those same shocks, and our reaction was fracking. Let's figure out how to get more oil.
Which was, pretty miraculous, like a pretty big economic boon for us. And it is one reason. It's interesting. It's one reason. The fact that we have so much domestic production of natural gas means that for us, natural gas prices are not going up like they very notably are other places like Europe. It depends on Russia and all these other places. So in some sense, that's why the US has been at least somewhat sheltered so far from the fallout from our own war. But that's not going to last.
Well, our oil companies, I think, have an enormous windfall from this. I think the profits, it's expected to be $60 billion in additional cash flow this year from American exports of oil, to now that the price is way up. Eventually, that catches up with everybody, and we look at their profits and see that we're paying more, and Americans are going to go like, "Wait, what?"
Well, unlike natural gas, oil is a very fluid international market. It's a global market. So it doesn't really with natural gas, we can't export enough yet anyway. They want to build these export terminals, but as of yet, we can't export enough to really make it a global market, which is why we're benefiting from the low prices. But oil, it really doesn't matter how much oil you produce. No matter how much you produce, you're still paying the global price that everybody else is paying. And if prices go up, you're paying those high prices too. And that's what the fact that we produce more oil than anyone else in the world is in no way whatsoever sheltering us from high oil prices and the damage they do.
I see. So, but we haven't built the terminals for LNG to go around the world.
Well, we want to build the export terminals, and we're currently trying to bully various countries into building import facilities, which is also, this is, you have to think about these sort of like middle income countries. And the pitch from the United States is transition from coal to natural gas, right? But to do that, like to build a natural gas import facility and the infrastructure to carry that natural gas around, that is a 50-year investment commitment. And these countries are looking around saying, well, gosh, solar and batteries are already as cheap as natural gas. How cheap are they going to be in 50 years? You know what I mean? Like that's so Trump is over and over again running up against the limits of bullying. Like these countries are not going to shoot themselves in the foot to save his bacon.
Yeah. I had a long conversation with one of the congressmen who represents the area where I live, not me personally, but very near. And I think he's fabulous. And he's working to reorient the economics of domestic energy transition. And honestly, Dave, I thought I was talking to you. And Sean Caston said you used to be his editor.
Oh, that's funny. You're talking to Sean. Yeah, Sean and I go way back. When I worked for Grist,
Yep.
back in the early 2000s, I used to run guest posts
Yep.
from Sean when he was the CEO of a cogen company before he ever ran for Congress. So yeah, we go way back. He is easily the sharpest energy person in Congress, I think.
Well, and he's, I think, making progress on legislation there to do things that you've talked to me about, with like things that would actually help make our grid not just more reliable, but to change its economics so that it isn't just how do we pay for production, but how do we make it so the consumers are protected.
You know, I've been obsessed with the electricity grid for many years now, and finally, it finally seems like the political world is sort of like catching up and getting and starting to catch the bug, which is very exciting for me, of course. So it's all data centers in the short term. This is sort of the forcing mechanism.
Yes, shutting the Persian Gulf is on oil.
Yes, exactly. So all these conversations that we've kind of been delaying for a long time, like for 20 years, electricity demand in the United States was flat, and people got very used to that. Utilities got used to it, legislators, everybody. And now demand is going up quickly with all these new data centers. So it's just forcing all these conversations that we should have been having a long time ago. And I always emphasize to people, whatever you think about data centers, coming behind them is the electrification of transportation, the electrification of heating and cooling, the electrification of industry. So even if you hate data centers and think you can ward them off, demand is still coming. So we still have to think about the grid, making it stronger, more reliable. And you might have noticed, if you read any headlines in the last year, electricity prices are already going up, and people are already mad about it. So now we're facing a situation where we need a lot more investment in the grid. We need a lot more grid, and prices are going up, and people are mad about it, and Democrats are flailing around trying to find ways to reduce prices. It's a real sticky wicket. It's a real dilemma. I mean, I do think there are answers, but
well, talk about some of them. I mean, this is an area that you've spent a lot of time in. So talk about some of those answers. I mean, and just so we're clear for everybody, the grid isn't what makes the power; it's what gets the power distributed to everybody. But it adds cost.
Yes, I mean the main reason. I mean, there are lots of. If you look at expert analyses of why power prices are going up, it's a complicated story. It's a little bit different everywhere. It's not mainly data centers. I mean, there are some confined geographic areas where it is data centers, like Virginia, but nationally, that's not the big picture. The main thing that's driving up prices is the poles and wires, is the grid, the carrying of the energy from the generators to the consumers. So how to increase grid capacity, because this is the problem, right? All these data centers want to hook up to the grid, and all the utilities are telling them, sorry, we're maxed out. We got no room. We got no spare capacity.
We can't push any more power through these same pipes.
And for data centers, sort of legendarily, for data centers, every day they're not hooking up to the grid, they are losing millions of dollars. So they are very eager for speed to hook up. So the question is, how do you find more grid capacity without just throwing billions of dollars at it, right? Because if we just throw billions of dollars at it and build more, the data centers will get online, but prices are going to go through the roof for everybody. There's going to be a revolution. There's going to be guillotines. Like, I know utilities love making money, but even the utilities are like, we can't just
raise prices.
Continue raising rates for forever and ever, amen, or we're going to get pilloried. So the question is, how do you find more grid capacity without building more grid? That's the riddle, and there's an answer. I mean, and this is how I explain it. So I think people understand that we build the grid for the peak of demand, right? Because traditionally you're not able to store power. You know, it was only very recently that energy storage sort of became economic. So the whole grid and the whole grid system is built around generation and consumption being basically simultaneous, right? You have to generate the power when it's being consumed, which means for the peak of demand, you know, the most people, like everybody coming home, coming home from work, turning on their lights, cooking dinner, the highest that demand will be in the highest day of the year,
100-degree day,
100-degree day, like just you have to build a grid that can satisfy that much demand. But obviously, the vast majority of the time, you're not at that peak. You're very far below that peak, which means the vast majority of the time, a lot of that stuff you built isn't getting used. And so the term for this is grid utilization. Like, how much of the grid capacity that we've built are we actively using on average? And grid utilization is at a multi-decade low. It's down around 50%. So
wait, stop there.
50%.
How is that possible, even with the new, finally we're using more energy across the country after you said it was stable for a long time. You've added all kinds of new uses, electrification, replacing us. So even with increased uses of electricity, utilization is low.
Thus far, yes. Yeah. Because if you just heedlessly add new demand, generally you're pushing the peak up, right? If you want to add new demand without pushing that peak up, you have to be very thoughtful about it. And so this is the key, at least in the short to midterm, how to get more grid capacity without spending cajillions of dollars is figure out ways to better utilize the grid you've already built. And how do you do that? I mean, I could talk for hours about it, or I could just say batteries, basically. Yeah, so batteries do it. Because batteries are time machines for electrons. They allow you to move when you produce, and when you consume, you can move it to whenever you want. So you can add demand and just ensure via batteries that the demand does not add to that peak, right? You can better utilize all that capacity underneath the peak. And there's a lot of runway. That's 50% utilization. Yeah. If you could get up to 60, 70, 80% utilization, you could add data centers for the next decade without building anything other than a bunch of batteries. So there is an answer to this, but you have to align the incentives. You got to get utilities thinking the right way. You have to get legislators thinking the right way. But this is starting to happen. So I would
I think about this like finance. To me, finance is just the art of moving money through time, right? Like, I mean, in the old world, if I wanted to buy a canoe and I had eggs, I had to walk around with my eggs until I find somebody who wanted eggs, and I wanted a canoe. Then we had money, and that was helpful, yes, right? Made it easier, but it still had to be in real time. But today I can say, look, I'm going to earn more money in the next 5 years. So give me money today. I'll pay you back over 5 years, and I can use it now to buy a house, right? I mean, you're talking about doing that to energy.
It's not hard. It's not difficult to find an analogy for a product for which there is storage. That's almost all products, right? It's almost only electricity where you don't have that. I mean, I think about, for instance, the information system, the internet system. Like, imagine if you had to produce people had to listen to the pod at the instant you were producing it. You know what I mean? If you couldn't store information.
Oh, you mean radio?
Yeah, or radio. Just imagine, or imagine, like, I could go on and on with analogies, but the point is, like, you can use the batteries to move things around. So I would point people to a very, like, this is obscure, but I think it is a sort of flag about where we're going, a very positive flag about where we're going. Up in Minnesota, they just are now having the utility. The utility is just building battery installations on commercial and industrial sites. And it's not asking the commercial and industrial clients to own the batteries or maintain them or fuss with them at all. It's just basically like treating the commercial industrial land, like we're gonna rent this land from you. And then they're putting these sort of smallish batteries, like 2 to 5 megawatt batteries, all around their grid, distributing them all around their grid. And that is going to immeasurably increase grid utilization in that utility area. And I think once other utilities see that, they're like, oh, like building new transmission lines is hella expensive. Building new transformers is super expensive and difficult because the pipeline is all backed up. Building new infrastructure in general is very expensive, but batteries are pretty dang cheap. And they basically substitute for this other kind of infrastructure. So like, I think once this program proves out, other utilities are going to be like, this is a way forward. It's relatively inexpensive. You get cheaper. And here's one aspect of this. So if you can add new demand, say a data center, without building any new infrastructure because you have a bunch of batteries, then you have the same amount of fixed costs, the same amount of infrastructure costs spread over a larger body of customers, which means the per customer costs go down, meaning you add a data center and it pushes prices down. You can do that with batteries. That is the magic of batteries.
That is fabulous. You're going to have to re-educate regulators.
I have a whole, I just recorded like an hour and a half long podcast about this last week, and it's coming out in the next couple of weeks. And I think I really am going to, push this one on everybody because it really makes this point very, very clearly. You can add demand and reduce prices at the same time. You can reduce prices by adding demand. That's very counterintuitive for people. I think it takes a little thinking to wrap your head around that, but that's the sort of skeleton key for how we move forward.
The cost is fixed and you're sharing it amongst more people. I mean,
exactly.
That's what, I live in Chicago where nobody can pay any more property tax. You can't raise the property tax anymore. You need more people to tax.
Yes, yes, exactly. And this is another fun thing. Another pod I just recorded is with these two guys, these other podcasters who have just produced this like 4.5 hour long kind of mega pod on the history of the grid. And it's very interesting. Samuel Insull. I don't know if people remember this name.
Here, like early, Chicago.
Chicago guy. Yeah. He was sort of the early, very influential in the early electricity system established. And he built this, what was at the time the biggest generator in the world. It's after they moved from these steam engines to turbines for the first time. And he built this giant turbine. I think it was like 5 megawatts or something. It's tiny in miles terms. But what he realized is we're only running this turbine about 5% of the time because there's only like 5,000 clients in Chicago who have any electricity devices for us to power, right? They just have some lights in their house. So this is what he realized. He's like, if I can get more clients so that I can run this same engine more often, the per unit cost for each customer is going to go down. And so for the first years of the expansion of the electricity system, electricity prices went down and down and down and down and down by like 90%. And of course, all the other business guys were like, Mr. Insull, you're crazy. You're cutting your own profits. But he's like, no, I'm getting less profit per customer, but I'm getting lots more customers. He went out and found demand to fill in these gaps when his turbine wasn't running. So he went and talked to aluminum smelters. He went and electrified the streetcars in Chicago. He hooked those up to his turbine. So he added demand and thereby reduced the costs per customer. And that basic principle is still very much operative today. Like that basic insight is valid still today.
Yep. So interesting, but it hasn't been I mean, one of the reasons it's made this a little less, I mean, it's true in every other industry, but this one is so highly regulated, and the way we've regulated it has like I'm not a believer in deregulate everything. I actually like some government regulations, but it does make innovation harder.
Well, this is a complicated thing. Like, you don't want the people in charge of the electricity grid to be move fast and break things,
Right.
type of people. Like,
Yeah.
they need to be small c conservative, because their overriding mandate is reliability, right? I mean, that is their North Star. So they are loath to mess around. But I think, we can flip that around and see, like, this is an industry that operates for public purpose using private capital, which is kind of, when you think about it, kind of magic. It's pretty amazing that we can pull in billions of dollars of private capital and then dictate that it be used for the benefit of the public. And so we just need to remember that and start doing it, right? And also the other thing I would say is technology has changed so dramatically in the last 10 years, in the last 5 years, that like, utility regulation is not a fast moving dynamic area. So like, it is naturally taking regulators and utilities some time to sort of catch up and make sure that they're moving into this new thing safely, which is why I point to the Minnesota thing with the batteries. Like, that is sort of utilities sticking their toe in. Well, how about we own distributed batteries? Let's see how that works. And I think once that proves out, you just start flooding batteries everywhere. Basically, like, the way we're going to solve all our grid problems is putting batteries everywhere. They're going to be in front of the meter. They're going to be behind the meter. They're going to be in your stove, in your hot water heater, in your car. Batteries are just going to be everywhere. They're going to be ubiquitous. And so all these problems that come with the electricity system, where you have to produce and consume at the same time, you're decoupling that. You're decoupling the timing of production from consumption. And that changes everything. It changes everything. It changes the physical structure you need, changes the regulations you need, it changes everything. So it's taking some time for everybody to sort of realign around what these new technological
fascinating about this. But two things to say. One, for those of you who are still paying attention, if you want more of this stuff, go sign up for Volts. I mean, because this is like one topic, and they're like 100 like this that get at the technology and the economics and the regulatory stuff.
If you like systems thinking, this is just like, this is heaven for you. This is like systems of systems of systems, and we're trying to change them all at once. And it is multiple fascinating dilemmas. But like I said, like, everybody's gripped by it. Everybody's moving. Everybody's talking about it. Like, it's slightly a bummer to me that it took a bunch of tech guys with big bags of money and stupid AI to force all this to happen, but it's good that it's happening. It's good that we're having these discussions.
I mean, you could say the same thing about closing the Straits of Hormuz. It's terrible, but it has
Trump is the first climate president. That's kind of a joke that's been going around on social media, and I think it's true. Like, he's going to do more.
That was the second point I wanted. We've had this conversation without talking about politics, because a lot of this change is happening no matter because politicians can't stop it, even if they want to. And that's what we've learned. They are trying to stop it. They're partnered with the fossil fuel industry and doing their best.
And they're issuing legal orders forcing utilities to keep coal plants open, even though the utilities are saying, no, we don't need these. We don't want these. These are not economic. They're forcing. I mean, that's literally, if you want to stop this from happening, you have to use the heavy hand of government to force it to stop, because there's no way, like, cheap is cheap. Like, the tide's coming in.
Yeah. So I mean, that is a very optimistic insight.
Yeah, I mean, but it's all with everything in climate change. It's always just speed. It's always just this background. We need to be moving faster. The crisis is moving faster than we are. We need to be going faster. But this, like, it's funny, like, you know, Democrats back in like 2009 with the Waxman-Markey bill proposed this sort of mild, very small, incremental, slowly phasing in, very often rebated, et cetera, price on carbon. And the political system went crazy. Republicans went crazy. It went down in flames. Everybody hated it. Oh, we're never going to tax carbon. Oh, that's the worst strategy possible. It raises prices for everybody. Public's going to hate it. You're never going to get away with that. Trump has, at a stroke, imposed a carbon price
of carbon. Yeah.
Immediately, harshly, overnight, larger than anything Democrats ever contemplated. You know what I mean? Like, this is the crudest, most difficult and painful way we could possibly be doing this, but we're doing it.
Yep. Well, yeah. So let's change topics a little bit and talk more about politics, because it doesn't matter where you turn. To climate, to architecture, to art, to war, to economics, to civics, to good taste, to common decency, to religion. There is no human endeavor this man and his team have not caused generational damage.
Yeah. I don't, and you know, I'm constantly hearing people. You know, I'm on Blue Sky now. I fled X, and I'm on Blue Sky, which has its own dysfunctions. It's very, you know, it's a big group of like-minded. It's the chorus singing to itself mostly. But you know, I keep hearing people talking about rebuilding and starting from scratch, and you know, like a new start. And I just like, yeah, we need that, but I'm looking around and like, who are you talking about?
I'm confused.
Who's going to do that?
Well, Dave, I'm really confused, because as you and I are talking, what is starting right now is the Confederacy again. We are seeing, courtesy of John Roberts, the entire history of civil rights. Certainly,
they never went away. They never accommodated themselves to modernity, as I and many other people were screaming at the top of my lungs for decades, as everybody underestimated the perfidy of the Republican Party. I mean, that is my career in a nutshell, is me screaming, look at these lunatics. Eventually these guys are going to be in charge. It's going to be a disaster. And you know,
and
media both sides it, and Democrats are too busy scolding each other, and nobody paid attention to the oncoming threat. And here it is, exactly as anticipated. The lunatics are in charge, and they're ruining everything. And I just like, Edwin, how many, like, I'm old enough now that I've lived through several cycles of, we elect Republicans and they screw everything up. And then we elect Democrats and they come in to clean it up and right the ship and get everything working again. And then we immediately take it for granted and elect more Republicans and they screw everything up again. And I'm just like, and still to this day, there's this weird public sentiment that Republicans are more serious on the economy, that they're better on the economy, even though if you look at economic statistics over the last several decades, it is very clear that when you get a Republican president, you get deficits, you get economic contraction, you get disaster, you get wars, you know. And then like the only ones who ever brought the deficit down were Bill Clinton and Barack Obama. It's crazy to me. I've just been wondering ever since Trump came on the scene, like how ludicrously, theatrically, absurdly malign do these people have to get before we just stop treating this as like, oh, the parties are just two sides, two mirror images of one another. And, you know, they both have their moderates and extremists, and just this bizarre framework that we've clung to, even though reality has been like long since detached from it. I'm just like, how crazy and bad does it have to be? I thought
we are there.
I thought Trump one was it. I thought Bush was it.
But here we are. I mean,
maybe I don't have any faith left. I don't have any faith left that we're not just going to do the same thing again. Elect a Democrat and then say, oh, we can't have accountability. We want to look forward, not backward. Let's move ahead. And then Democrats slowly piece everything together. And then maybe we're just going to do that cycle over again.
I don't believe that voters will put up with that. I think voters are demanding. They
I
have
sure hope not.
demanded since 2008 when the economy crashed and nobody was held accountable. But this pillaging of our country for a few people right now, and the absolute corruption of this administration, I just believe Americans are not going to let a next administration come in and say, look, we just need to make the trains run on time and fix the roads. And we need to do that too, but we better be able to do two things. And without accountability, you're right, we will keep trading back and forth.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say that the sort of signal feature of American politics, my entire adult life, has been a glaring lack of accountability
Yeah.
for people who screw things up. So maybe now the American people are sick of it. Maybe they'll really drag their leaders into doing it. But like, I thought that I was like, George W. Bush just crashed the economy. He started the dumbest war in history. He bungled a hurricane. And that's only the top 3 of 100 things you could list. I thought to myself, this is going to discredit the Republican Party for a generation. They're going to be out in the wilderness for a generation and have to reconstruct themselves from the ground up before we let them back in. But no.
But we didn't hold them accountable.
Within 6 months of Obama taking office, it was all gone. It was all gone like a puff of smoke.
Well, there were some unique challenges in having the first Black president, for sure.
For sure. Yeah.
But I mean, but right now, Americans are thirsting for blood. Each other's all over the place, and the Republicans are already coming after our blood. And I just think next time, I mean, I've told you this before. If a Democrat wins and we win the House, Mar-a-Lago is going to be the next Smithsonian Museum of American Fascism. We're going to take their.
Well, we're going to have a giant ballroom, a giant monument to American fascism, or at least a giant hole in the ground where a ballroom was planned. We're going to have something there that will.
Yeah, I mean, if he builds his arch, we can get rid of the national deficit by putting a sledgehammer down there and charging $10 per swing until it's gone. I mean, I'll stand there all day and pay $10 to swing at it.
But like, you have to be at least somewhat politically engaged, at least somewhat, you know what I mean? Like, you have to have at least some accurate knowledge of what's going on to aim your anger in the right direction. And like, our information environment is a smoldering wreckage, and the American people don't know what's going on. And most of them are very politically disconnected, and they just have no real sense of like the real dynamics and the real solutions, I think. I mean, even if they come in baying for blood, I'm nervous. Are they gonna, you know what I mean? Are we gonna be going after the right people? Are they gonna identify the real villains? It's, everything to me comes, as you know, having talked to me before, everything with me comes back to the information environment, which is just absolutely, terrible in the U.S.
Let's talk about that, because months ago, before Trump came back, you and I talked about whether we would be able to trust government reporting. Right? Yeah. And now we know, because they're hiding data on things like vaccine efficacy. They're hiding the cost of this war.
They're shutting down whole departments. They're shutting down whole scientific research branches. They're shutting down the installation where we measure atmospheric CO2, Mauna Loa, the famous, famous graph of rising CO2 concentrations. They're trying to shut that down. They're trying to, they're destroying the information apparatus. And this is one of the things I'm talking about. Like, you have to be, I think, pretty clued in to really be following that strand of the story, that they are in particular going after information and analysis and science parts of the government. And like, they've already done so much damage that it is going to take a long time to rebuild all that.
It's generational problem. And they're going to, we now know they're federal judges who say they've been coming to court and making up the facts in court. Right? So we get this real problem. But as you and I are speaking, there's another panic because there's a boatload of people with a hantavirus. And they're looking at our government here and going, holy crap. If that comes here, we are troubled because these guys aren't prepared for it.
Yeah, and didn't we just find out? I may be misremembering this headline. I just saw this headline like a couple of days ago. I feel like Kennedy fired some people who were specifically studying like outbreaks of viruses on cruise ships. I think
Yeah,
like,
they're gone.
you know,
Gone.
everything sounds like a parody to me. Everything sounds like an Onion headline now, but I think like literally we recently fired a couple of the people in the government who were specifically analyzing that problem.
Right. And instead we said, I put kids in tanning beds. I mean, this is where, so I think you're right that you have to follow it closely to get any one of these. But I think Americans, I mean, you look at the polling data and they lie to us. I mean, the information ecosystem is full of lies and owned by the right wing largely. And the government is making up data and lying every day. And yet like 60% of Americans are like, you know what, I see through it.
I mean, there's a limit to the amount that you can pee on people's heads and tell them it's raining. You know, there's a limit. There's a limit to what you can. The vibes are obviously bad, but this is my worry always, is that all things being equal, bad vibes, mistrust, anger, resentment, those all serve the right ultimately in the long term. You know what I mean? Like they try to make bad vibes because they know on some level that bad vibes serve their purposes. So again, like I'm all for anger and retribution. Like genuinely, I will vote for Nuremberg 2.0 if someone proposes it. Absolutely. But in the long term, we need to start rebuilding trust. So we need, I mean, people, if you look at if you poll people, how do you feel about the economy? Like somewhere around 2020, 2021, those vibes detached from objective indicators.
Mm-hmm.
And just so like people feel worse now about the economy than they did in the recent past when the economy was much worse. So the bad vibes are overwhelming now, and they're ambient and they're everywhere. And that's, you can use that against the incumbent administration, but like, that's why Biden lost. You know what I mean? It just seems structural now that I feel like we're trapped in a cycle now of one-term presidencies because we just hate everybody and hate everything. And whoever is in power, we hate them and get mad at them.
I appreciate that. And recent history is on your side in that. I do think there is a great majority in America that by and large shares really important ideas about how the country should move forward. And we need politicians, whatever party they come from, the ones who are going to figure that out, are going to create a majority that lasts.
It is part of the part of the project of any reactionary authoritarian movement to vice signal, basically, right? To say all that talk about virtue, niceness, fairness, accuracy, it was all hypocrisy. No one ever cared. No one cares about that stuff. Everybody's out for themselves. Everybody's lying. Everybody's chiseling and angling. So you should do it too. And you should find the mafia boss who seems to have the most powerful operation, just attach yourself to the mafia boss. There's no rationality anymore. There's just the law of the jungle. That's what they try to convince everybody. I do believe that there is a majority in America that still holds on to basic liberal, like small L liberal precepts. But we, again, to return to the information environment, we desperately need to be doing more virtue signaling. We desperately need to be doing more. Hey, it's good to be good. It's good to have some self-restraint. It's good to tell the truth. It's good. Like, where do you hear that signal in America anymore? In American media anymore?
No, I don't think. I mean, American media isn't what it was. It's divided, and there's a huge new infrastructure of people doing what you and I doing. And in America, we're hearing from the first American Pope in his battle with his president, right? About the difference between decency and.
Yes, I mean, that's why I think people are, in a sense, embracing this Pope so much, because like the appearance of a genuinely decent person in a high profile position these days is like a oasis. As you've been stumbling through the desert for weeks, you're like, oh my God, it is possible to be decent and good. And look how horrible these people around him look in contrast. Like, it is possible to be good. Like, we just really need to be saying that more often. It sounds silly, it sounds naive, it sounds, cringe or whatever, but like, because the cynicism is so deep and so ubiquitous and so long standing, like, that's the hole we have to dig out of. Like, you can't do anything with government in the long term the way we want without some basic foundation of social trust. Just this idea that, like, we're in a common project together, we're part of a group together, we're not just a sack of feral cats. You know what I mean? Like, we are a country, and that's been lost. Like, so that's the long-term project to me, is just rebuilding social trust from the ground up. And you need media and communications, and you know what I mean? We need to be thinking more deliberately about that. We can't just sort of do polls and parachute in every 4 years with a bunch of ad buys. Like, that's not going to shift public opinion.
And that's politics. I think you're talking about society, deeper than politics.
Yeah. But it would be nice if we had some leadership from the political class. I mean, that is kind of what a leader is supposed to do, at the very least. Is sort of people have put Obama now in the cringe bucket, but I miss that dude, because one of the things he did, I mean, the very reason he got famous in the first place is that he came out and said, we are a good and decent people. That was the thrust of his famous speech at the DNC, and people received it like, yes, thank God. Like, yes, we can, like, hope, all that stuff. Like, we still desperately need all that stuff, but like, you can't just like manufacture generational political talents. All
right. Well, mark my words. I'm going to put my marker down. It's coming. It's coming. It's coming, because Americans aren't going to put up with less anymore. We're tired of putting up with less. And the party establishment, which is really just the money in the party, we're at a place where organized people are now standing up to organized money in a way they haven't in generations. I saw it in a recent election here in the state. 3 perfectly decent candidates for Democratic Senate, but one of them had the most money and was the party of the money, the guy of the money party, and he lost. In a Democratic primary, that's going to happen. We're going to pick people who have a different point of view.
I hope so. I hope so. I mean, one of the things I worry about is you remember, they devoted their whole selves to dragging Obama down. They tried so hard, and he maintained his altitude through sheer force of charisma, and his incredible self-possession. Yes, like, his decency was not fake. He was not performing it. Yeah. So like, he had a very deep sense of calm and self-possession that somehow survived that. But A, it's very difficult to find people who are like that, and B, the machine that tears them down is much stronger now than it was even under Obama, because now they're not. I mean, the very notion of right-wing media has sort of lost its coherence. Now it's all right-wing. They bought the Washington Post, they bought the LA Times, they own Twitter, they own Meta, they own YouTube. Like, everywhere you go and look is awash in right-wing propaganda, except for these, what are these Substacks? These little scattered Substacks. So
ABC sued them today, surprising.
CBS. They bought CBS.
CBS is gone. But the thing that's happening there, again, Dave, is they're losing nobody's watching anymore. Their ratings are crashing. People are leaving. Some
real Schadenfreude. We gotta take our Schadenfreude where we can, and there's some real delicious Schadenfreude with Barry Weiss just
I think the bed in front of. That's going to be the end of we've run out of time. We're on overtime, and I really appreciate it. But ending with the Schadenfreude about the collapse of CBS, because they're telling lies all the time when they used to be trusted. That's
very few bad people are being punished. So when they do, run into trouble, I think we're due to take a little enjoyment from it.
Yep. Dave, thank you very much. And just you tell everybody where they can find your work.
Yes, it's volts.wtf. Come subscribe. It's a newsletter, it's a podcast, or you can sign up on what's the phrase? Wherever you get your podcasts, just search for Volts.
It's really, guys, it's really good. Really good. And follow Dave on Blue Sky, that what he calls that echo chamber. It's fun. Thank you.
Just search for Volts on Blue Sky too.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Edwin.